He's on his way.
Oh, okay.
John Michael's on his way. We have a board member on his way, so we're gonna wait a minute or two to. Uh-oh. There he is.
There he is.
The man of the hour.
This is great. Hey, Barry. How you doing? Good.
All right, I'll call this meeting to order. Thanks for everybody being here. First on the agenda is our consent agenda for the meeting minutes of for the previous month, which is July 24th. This is actually the August meeting happening in September. We'll have another meeting on the 25th of this month. I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, next we have the financial reports, both the TIF and non-TIF districts. We also have the Lexington Village financials. Nothing much new has happened in that area. There's also a summary sheet. We've got a sheet that's showing what interest we're accruing each month, which is for the discretionary fund, so it gives us an idea of what we'll have for the end of the year to add that discretionary fund, which seems to be our most popular fund recently. I'm trying to find where I've got where that sheet's at. Okay, it's back behind the first stuff. Right now, in January through July, we have $102,000 in interest. So presumably, we'll have about the same, so we'll have probably around $200,000 if interest rates stay the same, which may not happen, to add to that fund for next year. We also still not received the farmer's payment yet for the Chase Davis property. And my memory is that's about $11,000, I think.
Have you got it yet? Because we can't put it in until you got it.
Yeah, something like that. So that'll be coming in. All right. I will make a motion to accept the financials as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
The only thing I want to mention, Mike, because I mentioned it to you, just some of the, we had, and the tracking of approved and pending, there are some things that we've approved. And I was asking Mike, how are we going to track those going forward? So like the driving range we approved last month to come out of the industrial park. So, I think historically, Mike has done the work to list those things. The driving range one, the educational pavilion being the other. So I just asked that question to Mike.
Right.
Nothing to change necessarily.
The answer is I'm too busy.
Right.
And I'd hope that we got Dwayne on board. He could do some of that kind of stuff. He's been doing stuff with the clerk's office, I think, more than he's, especially just taking all his vacation time off. Fishing like crazy. So, yeah, I mean, we got a couple issues that we need to go through on just how we handle some stuff. A lot of our resolutions don't define how it gets broken down. When we're doing things, when I get the bank statement, I don't have access to it.
Yeah.
So all I can see is check numbers. So luckily, Robin has been giving me some breakdowns there. Anybody that's got some kind of long-term payment that's being paid, the clerk's treasurer's office is paying that.
Yeah.
I have a resolution that shows $50,000, we just paid $2,533.22. I don't have the way to get that back to there. So then so that's part of the problem, I say, and just again, for a while, we also got the board, it goes from our stuff to Board of Works voucher, and that's got the resolution on it, so then I've got to go back and find those. So it's a case where, at this point, it's just more than I can handle.
Yeah, no, I get it. I'm not saying, I don't want you to think I'm saying anything about your.
Well, no, I mean,
I know you do.
I mean, there's a motion that you're going to take it over.
No, I'm wondering if Dwayne can do it, or if somebody else, somebody can do it, because, that's $300,000.
I know.
So it's, not.
Well, and we even bumped into that, even with Baker Tilly, and the fact that they're presenting the information, and in years past, they had stuff out there.
Right.
Now, also in years past, there'd be stuff that was left. Does it come off? So it's a case where our accounting system is not as, we're using a bunch of spreadsheets trying to hold this stuff, and then we added 3, 4, or 5 new districts, and then you're trying to put all this together, so it's a case where we've got, so.
I mean, is it something where we should invest? We've got this discretionary fund. Should we have a different accounting system? I mean, should we have some software to help us keep track of all this? Because it is a lot.
Right.
It's a lot of your time. And I think when we're looking at dollar figures at the bottom of these sheets, it'd be great to know that actually we have approved this, or we approved this and this much has been spent and this much is still pending. I think that's good information. So maybe that's, and I don't know if you all might have a recommendation on some software, not, something super, super robust, but something robust enough that it will be more efficient and we have more transparency around the funds. So maybe just a conversation for another day.
Right.
But
well, I think that would be great too. And we have Dwayne as a tool that's possible to be paying him, by the hour. So it's a case where, unfortunately, I've had some medical issues for the last 3 months or so. So you should be more worried about that.
Yeah.
If I die tomorrow and you have no spreadsheet. You got some bigger issues, you realize what's going on. But anyway, say in the past, the ideal situation that you have a meeting like this, you go right back, take whatever's voted on, put it in there, and I say that way you'd have everything that happens.
Yeah.
Right now, we are being driven off of the Board of Works vouchers. So I have to sign each one of those. Dwayne brings those to me. I then break them, and then we break them down in the different. It would also help if we do this thing where we're breaking stuff down by 3 different districts in 3 different amounts. If they don't cash all 3 checks at the same time, and I don't have access to the bank account to be able to see who this check is paid to.
Right.
Have no clue.
Yeah.
So, it's a weird thing. The dance we do with the clerk's office is kind of an interesting dance, and saying Dwayne understands all the working stuff. So I think he is, in the long haul, he is the solution to that. Now, say even if you buy a software, you have the same problems if you don't have access to see who those checks are being paid to.
Yeah.
It'd be nice when they paid a check, like a regular accounting system, when that check got cut, you would appear on that sheet to say we have a pending check that's out there in float. At this point, we wouldn't have that either, because we're not doing that. The clerk's office is doing that. So, I agree. We need to do a better job. We need to have a committee, subcommittee, whatever, they're going through and say, okay, how are we going to handle this in the future? How do we take this stuff out of here? How do we monitor it? Like we had this stuff down with F&K and some of those companies that are turning monthly draws. You have to also have another spreadsheet or someplace to realizing, okay, and Dwayne's doing a good job of that, of saying, are we still below what we approved? Going at that. So it's kind of a mess. And I often use the phrase that we're drinking out of a fire hose. Yeah. Some of that's is
There's
what's
a lot
going on,
going on.
which is a good thing. But, so, I think we just need to, at some point, have some kind of subcommittee that goes and says, and it could be new software, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
We know that the state is coming to where budgeting is more, we've got all those categories we break it down into. We don't know if the state wants to have it broken down into infrastructure, quality of life, that kind of stuff, or are they interested in just saying what's happening to that TIF district?
Yeah.
So, maybe Baker Tilly may know what's going on with that, but anyway, so.
Well, there's a motion and second on the floor. I just want to mention that in the discussion because, I think it is information that we need to keep in mind because how many minutes go past if we don't have an idea of what we've approved, those dollars really aren't, they don't represent.
Right.
So,
Well, if there's any consolation, when they brought you on this board, I had you kind of earmarked to be taking over that spreadsheet, so.
yeah, I'm looking at it. I look at it very closely, Mike, and you put together, I do have to
Well,
give you
it's
kudos.
out of necessity, to say that right now, we have we used to have a maintenance fund, we talked about this a little bit, we had a maintenance fund. Years ago, State Board of Accounts said, no, you can't have maintenance funds, okay. Now we get into the residential property business, we gotta cut grass. Well, now we're back into the maintenance business, but we took that category out of there, so now we need to put that category back in.
Yeah.
Needs to be in every one of these funds we have. These also trickle up into a master sheet, into a summary sheet.
Right.
So it's just a case where we need to really decide what's important. And unfortunately, in my case, I just don't have time.
Right.
This is my busy season, so it is what it is, but say.
I just
But
say,
I am willing to take a pay cut if that will help.
I just say, John, I can sit down with Andy and kind of sit down and maybe figure out the best way to work that out.
Yeah.
And then just go from there and see if we can't present it. I can present maybe at the next meeting as, here's what we got, and you decide whether or not as a group, if that's what you want,
Yeah.
fine-tuned, and we can go from there. But
I think, at least we have the conversation, we may think there's no better solution because we just have a lot going on or whatever, but I think that'd be valuable.
yeah, and I do know, like as we go forward with stuff that's already been resolved, like the golf course and some of the other things that you've got advanced payments for, I've tried to catch up with Mike, and we've kind of talked about, hey, you realize we got this much
Right.
coming out.
Right.
So when you go into your next meeting, you need to make sure everybody's aware,
Right.
hey, the industrial park's getting banged for this
Exactly.
much already. You don't have that much.
Right.
You may show 1.4 million, but we may already know you got, 200,000 coming out of that. You got to take that off the top.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah, that'd be great.
And we have the budget issues where we also were, at the beginning of the year, you guys sit down and you have your budget committee and you decide numbers, but then first guy comes in, hey, I need to have
Blows it.
$200,000. And
Yeah.
you just your budget's now is no good. So, yeah, I agree, something needs to happen. And I say, in the past we did it, but then we also used to have meetings where people say, hey, that's still on the list. Oh, yeah, I guess we paid part of that, it was just, so I thought it was better to be, well, I don't know.
I get it.
I'm not sure it's better, but, it used to be, you'd have numbers that people would question, is that right? Well, no, we've already made one payment on that, so it should be, and then you had three different funds that it came out of, and just say, just kind of a mess. All right, so, we had a motion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, next we've got the notice of pending appeals, which is what we get every quarter from the county. It shows the appeals and stuff that are done. Usually by the time we get it, most of the appeals have been solved. But it is, you'll find there's a letter from Kathy Isaacs, the county assessor. And I say if you go to the page, there's a column on that thing that has all the TIF, if it's a check mark, it's a TIF account. And you'll see that it'll either be active or it'll be rescheduled, withdrawn, settled, or whatever. So that is, they're required to provide it to us. We don't have any, we have no action we can take to say, oh, we need to do something. It's just a record keeping that they're required to give us. Next thing on the agenda, and I put this on here because this is one of those interesting areas we've got, we were just talking about. This is the July and August property maintenance provided by H&H Landscaping, and this is the breakdown of all all the properties of ours they take care of. They're doing the Tangy Street property, they're also doing Lexington Village. And as I say, it will continue to grow with different properties we have. And don't know, basically, we've already approved a total amount, which is up to $40,000 this year. And so I included the resolution and the invoice here, just for information purposes. So basically, in the cases like this, the clerk's office will take this and they'll just apply it. But there again, how do we have to need another system? I'm not even sure what accounting system you'd have that would say, okay, here's, we allocated 40,000, we know it's taken off 6,780. We have this left, and that would need to be updated either on this sheet. Thing. So we have to we either need more spreadsheets to I guess to track this stuff, which probably makes some sense. But it's also it's a weird dance when it goes from us to the Board of Works and then the voucher made, and so sometimes that changes things.
Yep.
So.
Mike, you got one you're going to sign today again for another, I think, 5,000.
Right. Well, take that off of running balance. Yeah, and I say that this is a perfect example of that stuff. It was big when we were doing the stuff down on Riverside, the stuff with the various engineers and stuff like that, and they were billing us as of this month. It's really, we've approved, they've given us a budget to begin with, then you got change orders happening. So there's a lot of moving parts in that. I don't know, and I agree, we've outgrown, there were no when I first came on, there were no spreadsheets at all. And Scott Crowd had just a running thing, he could tell what was still live, and it's growing into a monster.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
it is what it is. Okay. Now moving to new business, we've got our friends from Baker Tilly here today to give us the annual report. This is Andy Mauser. He's our specialist in charge.
Thanks, Mike.
He's the director I see here, so.
I'm a director.
You're a director. Man, I think you've gone up in the world since you were director last year?
I think so.
Okay. All
The
right.
last couple of years, maybe, around there, so.
You've always been a director in my heart, Andy.
Well, thank you, Mike, I appreciate it. And I brought Heidi here with me as well. Heidi is one of my consultants, and she's been helping me, I think, on all things Logansport for, probably the last year plus. Just going to help with a little bit of the presentation here today as well. So I'll try to be respectful of your time. I know you've got a pretty lengthy agenda after us as well still. So, but you probably recall this is something we've done for the last few years. There was a requirement put in place, probably been 4, 5, 6 years ago now, that requires redevelopment commissions to do an annual presentation that's open to the public and overlapping taxing units. And you have to talk about the budget, the long-term plan, and then the impacts of your TIF areas. So this has kind of always been our attempt to meet those requirements, but then also, provide you with a good kind of working document tool for, use throughout the year. So first up, a couple slides, just contact information. Certainly don't hesitate to reach out if there's anything we can help answer throughout the year, any TIF questions. Slide 4 just looks at kind of the mechanics of TIF areas. Anytime a TIF area is established, you've got a base assessed value that's set as of that base date. And then the TIF only captures what's represented by the blue box on that page, which would be the incremental assessed value.
Andy, hold on one second. If anybody wants to see, you got copies up there for anybody to see what he's talking about.
Yeah, do you have extra copies?
Yeah, there's extra copies. Somebody wants to see nobody? Okay.
Riveting stuff.
Nobody wants to stand up.
So the goal of your TIF areas and what your TIF areas have done is grow. You're capturing dollars and then you've continued to reinvest. But then the goal of any TIF area is what's represented by that red box on the far right, and that's to grow the assessed value within the TIF area and then to get that assessed value back to the tax base. And I would just note as you look at that schedule, your downtown and airport areas, they are much further into their lifespan than some of your newer TIFs. Those will both expire after 2031. So you're really, 6, 7 years down the line from that assessed value being returned to the tax base, which will have positive impacts on the city and the other overlapping units. Slide 5 just looks at kind of the levels of TIF. When we talk about TIF areas, the Redevelopment Commission can set up TIF areas anywhere within the redevelopment district, and the redevelopment district encompasses the entire city. So you've got TIF areas anywhere within the city boundaries. And then your TIF areas have 2 layers. One is the economic development area, which is really where you can spend those dollars. And then the second piece is the allocation area. For some of your TIF areas, the economic development area and allocation area are one and the same. And then for your consolidated East End Gateway, for example, that's one large EDA, but then you've got 3 separate allocation areas within that. So just kind of some of the nuances of how TIF areas are set up. And then next slide looks at the term of the allocation areas. You do not have any pre-1995 TIF areas, but then you have a mix of the second and third categories on slide 6. You've got several areas that were set up between 1995 and 2008. Those areas all have 30-year lives, so your airport, your downtown, your original East End, and your original Gateway are all 30-year TIF areas. And then you do have a couple of post-2008 TIF areas, and those all have 25-year lives from the issuance of any debt. So you've kind of got different lifespans in different TIF areas, all at different points in those lifespans. But now I'm going to let Heidi talk a little bit about your consolidated TIF area.
Yep. So starting with this first area, it was originally 2 separate areas, the East End and the Highway 35 Gateway Commerce. And that East End area was set up in 2008 with a 30-year life, expiring in 2038. And that Highway 35 Gateway Commerce was set up in 2007 with a 30-year life as well. And in 2014, these 2 areas were consolidated and expanded with a now 25-year life. And going into slide 9, in 2023, collections were at a little over 700,000, and we're estimating collections to be at 900,000 for 2024. And so far in the spring, collections were at 492,000, which is about 54% collection. So we're on track for that estimate. And in pay 2025, you can see that we're showing quite a bit of growth at 1.1 million. And that growth was due to a lot of different parcels, some of the larger being some improvements to the McClure gas station and improvements to the Grand Industrial Warehouse, both near the highway, as well as a new urgent care facility that's located on East Market Street.
Thanks, Heidi. So next slide, we just tried to include kind of a cash flow for 2024. This looks at what we anticipate you'll bring in for the entire year. So again, about that 900,000 that Heidi mentioned. And then we've really looked at, based on what Mike had provided, kind of your spending to date in the various categories. You'll see the majority of that being infrastructure and maintenance. And that was all your expenditures through July. And then also looked at kind of your total budget for the year of just over $1 million. So you've spent about 739,000 so far through the end of July, so slightly ahead of kind of the pace where we would anticipate you be in for the full year with that $1 million that you had originally budgeted, but still kind of within the same guidelines. So assuming you stay fully within the budget this year, you'd have a slight spend down, but have a pretty healthy balance of about 1.2 million in the consolidated TIF fund. And we would anticipate that would stay in kind of the $1.2 million level next year, or going into next year. This doesn't include, we've kind of tried to isolate just your TIF expenditures and then take out anything that's moving to the discretionary account. So if you have interest coming in and then that getting moved to discretionary, we've not included it here, just to kind of isolate what's happening with the TIF dollars. But as Heidi mentioned, this is an area that's grown quite a bit in the last couple of years. And then I was looking back all the way to 2022, this area was a little under $400,000 a year. And then already, for 2025, we're seeing pretty substantial growth where it could be up to about 1.1 million. So I think this is an area you'll have capacity to do projects in the future. And I'll give it back to Heidi for the airport.
The airport industrial park allocation area was set up in 2000, and now it has a 30-year life after being extended twice from its original 10-year life it was designated. In 2023, the collections were at about 267,000, and in pay 24, we're estimating about 285,000. And so far for these spring collections, we're at about 78% of our estimate, which is due to some of the taxpayers in this area paying the full tax bill. So we should still be estimating that 285,000. And in pay 25, we're estimating about 311,000 just due to various investments made in those industrial buildings in that area.
Thanks, Heidi. So next slide, slide 13. Again, a cash flow for your airport industrial. This is an area that's been very consistent over the last few years, kind of in that mid $200,000 to $300,000 level, and we anticipate it'll kind of stay at that level going forward. But for 2024, you do have some spend down of your existing balance, assuming you do spend up to your budgeted amount this year, but this is certainly a fund that you've had some surplus, in the bank in the past, and has been one that's been able to assist with other projects. So kind of thinking big picture, I think in the future you may see, the airport get a little bit tighter, but at the same time, I think you'll start to see more surplus being generated in the consolidated as it continues to grow. So I think maybe some, just shifting in strategy going forward, but this is an area, at least in the past few years, I know has been able to, help with projects kind of around the city as well. And then I'll go back to Heidi for the downtown area.
Yep, the downtown allocation area was set up in 2001, and similarly to that past area, it now has a 30-year life after being extended twice from its original 10-year life. And going into slide 16, the 2023 collections were at $344,000, and in pay 2024, we're estimating them at $429,000. So far, collections are at 54% of that estimate, so we're right on track, and overall, this area has stayed consistent. So that pay 25 is just at that $435,000.
Thanks, Heidi. Next slide, slide 17, again, looks at the cash flow for the downtown area. This is one, as Heidi mentioned, you've got pretty modest growth from 2024 to 2025. Going back the last couple of years, this area did grow pretty quickly. In 2022 was down about $265,000 per year. So you're already up north of $400,000 in 2024 and 2025. So you saw quite a bit of investment downtown in the last 3 to 4 years that kind of hit the TIF rolls in the last 2 to 3 years. But as far as cash flow, this is an area I think you've always kind of, kept a pretty consistent balance. You're at about $252,000 spent through the end of July, which is about 55% for the year, so right on pace with where we'd expect you to be for 7 to 12 months. And then assuming you spend up to that budget, you would maintain your balance at about that $700,000 that you started the year with. And then I'll let Heidi talk about the Salai, the hotel area.
The Salai area was set up in 2021 with an expiration at 2047. In 2023, the collections were about $15,000, and in pay 24, we're estimating them to be at $114,000, and in pay 25, $131,000. So as you can see, it has had quite a substantial growth, and that is due to the hotel that has been being built. But in 2024, we're seeing that partial assessment, so that growth of about $100,000, and in pay 25, that hotel is being fully assessed. So this should stay pretty consistent going forward.
Thanks, Heidi. And I would just note, this TIF area, you might recall, a portion of the TIF is pledged to a bond for the developer for the initial project. So about 75% does go towards those bond payments. So 75% of the $131,000 next year will be about $99,000. But then you did hold on to 25% of the TIF, and that can be used really for any other projects in that area or within your greater consolidated TIF. So that should be about another $30,000 to $35,000 in 2025. And then we do list the bonds on page 20. These bonds were purchased by the developer, so there's no risk to the Redevelopment Commission, no risk to the city. You're only obligated to pay the lesser of the bond payment for 75% of what the TIF generates. And we do anticipate for this year and next year that you would just pay up to 75% of the TIF generates, and then any shortfall really is the responsibility of the developer as the developer. So a very low-risk financing, obviously, that helped with getting that project off the ground, and then is starting to provide TIF that you can use for other projects already. And then I'll let Heidi talk about the Junction, the mall, TIF area.
The Junction allocation area was set up in 2021 with an expiration at 2047. 2023 collections were about $20,000, with it growing substantially over estimate of $60,000 for pay 24 and at $68,000 for pay 25. And it's we've just seen the renovation, the rehab of the old mall. So as we can see, it's been growing quite substantially from 23 to 24.
exciting. And that one certainly could continue to increase in the future to the extent there's more work either on the mall itself or some of the outlots that are within the TIF area. And that one works almost identical to the hotel. So 75% will remain, or will go to the bond payment, and then 25% remains with the Redevelopment Commission. So for 2025, that's about $52,000 for the bonds, and then about $17,000 for the Redevelopment Commission. That again is pretty flexible as far as where you could spend those dollars. And then on slide 23, just the single bond obligation there as well. Much like the hotel project, you do just pay the lesser of the bond payment or 75% of the TIF. So again, it would be about that $52,000 next year that you would pay towards the bonds from what's generated from that allocation area. And then next, the last area, Lexington Village. I'll let Heidi talk about that.
It was set up in 2022 with an expiration of 2047, and this is your only residential TIF area. And this area has stayed pretty low at about 1,000 collections for the 2024 and paid 2025. And we've had the bonds that were recently issued to fund infrastructure, so hopefully we should see some houses being built, and that TIF should grow for pay 26 and pay 27.
And that's something I think, as we look, no TIF in 23, 24, or minimal in 24 and 25. That was kind of always the expectation, was get the infrastructure in, and then homes would be built, and really have I think a 5 to 6 year ramp up on homes coming online, and that was always anticipated to start with pay 26. So really no surprise that there's not much being generated there, but then as we roll into bond payments in 2026, the TIF should start to ramp up, and then hopefully by 2030 or so, you'll have sufficient TIF to make payments on the bonds. On slide 26, we do show the outstanding bonds. These are different than the hotel and mall projects in that the Redevelopment Commission can use Lexington Village TIF, but then to the extent that there is not enough Lexington Village TIF, you would have to tap into some of your other TIF areas. But those bonds are structured with interest that was set aside to make payments through 2025, so you really aren't responsible for anything until 2026. Assuming homes come online, the payment in 2026 will be about $49,000, and then it'll ramp up gradually over the next 5 to 6 years. So it gives you some time for homes to be built, and then TIF to start being generated. And then you do have the flexibility, again, hopefully Lexington Village will cover all, or at least a good chunk of the payments, but to the extent it doesn't, you could tap into that 25% that you're holding on to from July or Junction, or you could use some of your existing consolidated or airport TIF areas. I think the only one that was not pledged towards this bond was your downtown TIF, just to kind of maintain your flexibility there. So last section, again, part of the requirements are to discuss the impact of your TIF areas. I'm not going to go through these 4 schedules in a ton of detail, but on slides 28, 29, 30, and 31, we really break down kind of all the overlapping taxing units that overlap your TIF areas. You've got 4 different taxing districts with the different townships and schools that you do overlap. And then we've kind of highlighted what you capture from your TIF areas within each taxing district. So you'll see on the first page, in Logansport, Eel Township, current tax rate of $5.18. And then within Logansport, Eel Township, you capture $22 million of assessed value in your consolidated TIF, which generates about $758,000 in actual TIF dollars. And then you can see amounts for Junction, Downtown, Salai as well. All said, across these 4 taxing districts, you capture about $49.4 million of assessed value, and that generates about $1.8 million in total TIF across your areas. If you were to end your TIF areas today and pass through all that assessed value, I think what's important to note is, while you capture $49.4 million of assessed value, and that generates $1.8 million in TIF, when you capture TIF, you capture those actual dollars. When you pass through the assessed value. Mm-hmm. And so by passing through $1.8 million of TIF, you wouldn't actually pass through $1.8 million of actual funding to other units. What it would do is it would actually reduce tax rates because units are constrained by maximum levy. So the tax base goes up, each taxpayer would pay slightly less, which is obviously not a bad thing, but $1.8 million indirect impact you'll see at the bottom of that page would be about $17,000 that would go primarily to the county through its CCD fund, and then the airport authority through its cumulative building fund. So the majority of that rest of that 1.8 million would be just in the effect of pushing tax rates down, which could have some positive impacts for the city. But by far, the most efficient use of new growth for the city is to capture that, reinvest through your TIF areas, which you've done, and to continue to see those TIF areas grow. So really kind of what those schedules are showing there. And then just the last couple slides, as I mentioned, you do have a couple TIF areas that will start to expire in 2031. I know that's still a few years out, but you do have some ability to reestablish TIF areas. If you were to reestablish any of those TIF areas, all the new growth would then become part of the tax base. So you would not be able to double capture that growth, but then any new growth that would happen after the reset could be captured going forward. So that's something you could look at as you get closer to that expiration date. And then, certainly as we get closer to 2031 and we start to see assessed value go back to the tax base, that will have positive impacts for the schools, positive impacts for the city, potentially open up some other mechanisms that the city and schools could look at for funding. So those are things we're glad to look at, here in the next few years as well. And then last slide just looks at overlapping taxing units, as I mentioned with TIF and the way circuit breaker works. It's just important to note that what every taxing unit does affects all the other taxing units. And again, the TIF areas are no different. What you do impacts the county and the township and the city and the school and the library, the airport and all the other units as well. So. And then the last thing I'll add, that's really it for the presentation, but I know Mike brought up the TIF spending plan. We did finally get guidance from the DLGF on the spending plan, and really that guidance was that they're not going to provide any guidance on the spending plan. They're going to be the ones to kind of take all the spending plans and hold on to them for communities, but they're not going to dictate what those have to look like, what they can't look like. So we're in the process of kind of finalizing some templates that I'd be glad to share and kind of go through those with you for what you could do for next year to make sure you meet the requirement, but then also obviously make sure you reserve enough flexibility, because that's really the goal of the Redevelopment Commission, is to be able to respond to opportunities. So glad to kind of help through that in the next couple months.
Great. Questions?
The only question I have is, so is there a limit to how many times you can extend a TIF district? I mean, if we've done it once or twice already, is it standard to see communities continue to extend and, I guess 95 is not that long ago, so you might not have a whole lot of history to compare to, but.
Yeah, there's really no limitations. Your couple areas that you have extended, those were areas that you had a 30-year maximum statutory life, and when they were originally set up, I think the city council had limited them, so it was really more of a local limitation. So you've extended them, but you've always stayed within your statutory. A lot of communities, will utilize a full 30 years or a full 25 years. You can reset TIF areas as many times as you'd like. You just, every time you reset, that base is going to come up.
Right.
And so it doesn't really make sense to do that while an area is healthy and capturing.
Sure.
When you're closer to the expiration.
Right.
If you expect new growth, it may be something to consider.
Okay.
But you don't have to maintain the same boundaries. If you've had new growth here and you think new growth may start to happen here, you can certainly shift that TIF area or set up new. So.
Okay. Thanks.
Any questions from the audience? And all you guys are involved in this. Anybody want to? Anything you guys have for Baker Tilly? No.
So did we create we haven't created a TIF district for Chase and Davison's? And we're getting.
We may not.
Are we getting rent money off of that?
Yeah, we're getting
So
farmers.
where's that where's it showing up?
It's on your financial page on the.
I've seen that, but
The
why
discretion.
wouldn't we create a TIF district so it has its own?
Well, the debate is this, I think, is that, like in Lexington Village, we did a lot of stuff for that. In the case of Chase Davis, if you have an investor that would come in and do the whole thing, you then, most times they're going to pay for the roads and the sewers and that kind of stuff as part of the whole project. Nothing to say we couldn't do that. If you get to that point and you get our investor says, hey, this is great, but we can't do that. There's a certain amount of percentage of number of houses we can build before we can have another residential TIF district. I'm not sure. I can't remember. Bill probably knows more than anybody on that stuff.
I would say based on where it's headed, because developers are looking for a incentive, whether it be infrastructure or something else. If I were to guess, it'd be heading towards a residential tip.
Yeah, I think so too.
Then you can capture the money that you spend the money on. It's a better tool for what we're trying to accomplish. But we're not ready to pull the trigger yet. I'll make the decision. I'm guessing that's where it's going to head there.
And you would want to do it the day before a house is finished, essentially. Because if you did it right now, it has
Wasted.
so much life on the TIF, and if we're not ready to build something, then you use a year or two of the maximum amount left on that TIF.
It's wasted. It's kind of, yeah.
And that kind of goes to that point that Andy made. When I first came to TIF, I was the school representative, and that's been, I don't know, 15, 16 years ago, something like that. At that point, their idea was with TIF is that, we want to develop the south side. So we're going to, focus, for 10 years, we're going to focus on doing that. And so they didn't take it, I don't think they actually had a 30-year opportunity, but it was more a case where, okay, you got this business to come on the south side now, it helps feed to build this next business. I mean, it was really kind of you would focus your attention towards a district, and then they would help each other grow, and you kept the money all in that district or whatever. Mm-hmm. Since then, I mean, this idea that it goes to 30 years, when you have a mayor that gets reelected every 4 years, it's a little crazy, because you got 7 different periods of, I've seen a lot of cases where a mayor comes in and turns around and says, I don't want to do what we were planning to do. Okay, and so it's kind of a weird thing, because like before in 10 years, it was like really 2 terms of somebody, a mayor's term, and he or she would come in and focus on, some redevelopment or economic development. And then, so it's changed a lot in the last 15, 20 years on the thought process, because now, you've got a lot of, and it's being in a lot of different cities. I mean, when I think Bill mentioned, some of the incentives you have, if you're down near Indianapolis, some people question, you need to give incentives, for some of these housing things are just going like crazy or whatever. In our case, getting developers interested in Logansport has been a little more difficult, because they can pretty much have a sure thing in some of those market areas, and we have to kind of say, yeah, we want you to build, 50 houses here, and then,
What was your answer on the extending the TIF
As far as,
Do it.
for how long?
Didn't sound like statutory, by statute, there's not a limit. I mean, you just,
Right.
at the end of it, you need to,
you can't extend it past the statutory 25 or 30-year lifespan, but you can reset it. It's just important to note every time you reset it, it's going to go back to 0. If you have an area capturing $1 million, like you're, consolidated, if you were to reset it today, you'd get a new 25 years, but you would basically start from 0 and give up that $1 million.
So like in the industrial park, right now, if you are landlocked and every parcel is actually full, you'd come back to 0, and if there's no new buildings, you would basically have no money coming back in. East end, if it continues to grow, then you say, hey, we're going to redo that. Or if all of a sudden you had some stuff happening on the south side, west side, whatever, you could do that. But say the industrial park, I see when it hits its term, it is landlocked in by its, area. And so you might find there might be a second industrial park that might come out and maybe have a second, and then you're starting back at farmland value, and then you grow from there. But, I think when that one's done, it's probably done. But then East End probably could still be going, but there again, you've maxed out to that or whatever, so.
so maybe extend's not the right word, so terminology like a reset.
Yeah, I would say more of a reset.
Is the right thing, and then when you reset for another 25 or 30 years, but
Correct.
you start over at the base at the time.
Maybe the last thing I'd add, and then I'm happy to let you continue on, but the only thing I would say on like Chase Davis is I don't think there's any harm in kind of being patient. I think Bill and Jacob's points were great, that trying to figure out exactly how that area is going to develop and just being patient with it. We see a lot of communities that'll have an area, they think it's going to be residential, they go ahead and set a TIF area, and then it ends up, maybe it changes, and you wind up with a little bit of commercial or apartments or things like that mixed in, and there can be strategy in, residential TIF can capture all of that, but you only get 20 years. A commercial TIF, you get 25 years, and so if there's apartments, if there's maybe a little commercial node, maybe you would want to carve out a commercial TIF for those pieces, and let the residential be residential. Obviously, if you set up a residential TIF area, you could always go back and change it, but there's no point in rushing, I guess, until you really know what the project is. So.
Yeah, we don't know that yet either. There could be
Right.
some commercials, so that's a good point.
First trigger date is, it's not officially annexed.
Right.
You don't even, in the city.
It's not ours yet. Yeah.
That's the first.
Yep. Sounds good. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Oftentimes in TIF, we talk about, some boards deal black and white, and we oftentimes deal with a lot of gray. We have next, Mr. Chris Neighbors from Peak Community Services, and he's going to explain their project and their situation.
I want to thank you for having us today. And we would have these to you earlier, but we were waiting on a contractor. Final bid.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mike has already introduced me. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for Peak Community Services. I've been there for 9 years. Generally, when we do a presentation, you want to have attention gainer, and I have one this morning as I was signing in here. My cheap reader's broke, so you can laugh. I like to laugh myself. So, like I said, Peak Community Services, I do have an ask this morning, but before we get to that, I kind of wanted to give an overview of what we do. Oftentimes, folks know, they've heard of Peak Community Services, but they really don't know what we do and what benefit that we do bring to Logansport. We're located, our headquarters is located on Woodlawn Avenue, 1416 Woodlawn. Our main mission is to create opportunities for those we serve and let them live the best life they choose. We take care of Indiana's most vulnerable, adults with intellectual development disability. We do many type of services there with our clients. Part of that is housing. We provide housing for them, and we serve them to meet their life skills and demands that they need to help make it through life. We provide day services activities. That's what's on Woodlawn Avenue. We have 6 group homes, 4 are located here in Logansport, 2 in Winnemac. And besides group homes are more geared towards 24-hour care. It's like a step down from a nursing home. Waiver homes, meaning just like the homes that you live in, we provide housing for those as well. And those clients there that live in those type of homes have different needs. Unlike most of us in the room today, we could probably walk up and down stairs pretty easily. Some of them can't. They have disabilities, and they need services, meaning they do need staff, but it's lesser than a group home. Generally, 1 staff per 4 clients. And what Peak has been doing over the years we've been growing. This is a good problem. But as you all are aware, Logansport does not have enough housing. And it's unfortunate. So what we have done is kind of build our own homes. Our homes is not just something that we can, refit here upstairs, downstairs. It doesn't work like that. A lot of these folks need ADA accessibility. They need help. Ground floors, we provide bus transportation. And so what we end up doing is building new construction. And over on Erie, if anybody has ever been down Erie, we have a duplex down there. Our duplexes are all the same. They have 4 bedrooms on one side, 4 bedrooms on an additional side. So that's 8 people that can actually live in one of those homes. And we staff each side, 1 staff on each side, 24/7. They have 2 bathrooms on each side. They're ADA accessible, a common living area, and a kitchen, common kitchen. We accommodate those needs the best we can. So sometimes people may need a Hoyer lift, something to lift them out. And so we have to have that accessibility. These homes, the one we built on Erie was $360,000 6 years ago. As we all know, construction prices have went up. Mm-hmm. We are building 2 right now. If you've been down where the Tipton property was, That Tipton property sat vacant for many years, and it was an eyesore, and, you know, it just didn't have good curb appeal. And it's a half a city block. The good news is we are under construction right now. We're building 2 duplexes. The 2 duplexes will serve 16 people with further development over the next couple of years, where that site that sat vacant when we need the housing here in Logansport, we will have 5 duplexes. That is 10 houses, basically. Separate addresses. Yes, Peak Community Services is a not-for-profit. So we do not have a large cash reserve to invest in so much capital. However, we have really no choice because, you know, there's no housing for it. So what do? We got a crossroads. When we went in to ask for these 2 duplexes to be put in, Shepler Construction is the contractor, and they do a very, very nice job. I'm sure you all are aware of their work. The bid came in for those 2 duplexes at $1.2 million. So they were $566,000. So they went up about $200,000. So it's construction costs. They're way off in orbit, but it is what it is. We have no choice. We have a waiting list right now. We built another duplex in Winnemac. It's full. We have a waiting list right now for 3 more people to come into these 2 duplexes. So what does it look like in 2 or 3 years? We're going to have 5 duplexes there. We're going to have 30 new clients, new to this area. Where they're coming from, they're not coming from Logansport. They're coming from other places in Indiana, which in return allows us to hire 30 full-time new staff. Why is that important? Well, we're going to have 30 more people probably living somewhere around here. They're going to be working here. They're going to bring in their cash, what they make. If you look on the paper here, and I'm not going to just read this to you, you can read yourself, but we're going to have probably about $1.2 million of new salaries. This is not to mention the new level of peak management that we're going to have to hire. So if I factor that in, when we're talking salaries from $50,000 to $80,000, another layer of management, because we've got that big. We now serve 200 clients, and we have about 200 staff. We're bringing in 40 more, so we're growing with leaps and bounds. If you take a look at the footprint here, and you can kind of see, and everybody's familiar with Wright Street and in between 14th and 15th Street, you can see the duplexes there. As you can envision, 30 more people living there, living their life, spending the money out in the community, 40, and then 30 more staff. It's a lot of money coming into the city of Logansport to be spent here locally. It's not going anywhere else. And when we bidded this out, it was, like I said, $1.2 million. But as you can see on the second page there, to the left here is the east side of the road. If you go back west, it's around a 7.5 foot drop. The ground falls dramatically there. And we did not look at this at the time because the way the construction was, and we really did not know it was going to be this bad, but the sidewalks on 14th and 15th and on Wright Street, they're really, really, really bad. And it's going to take a retaining wall. We did not budget for that. And I was speaking with folks in the town, and they said, you know, there might be an opportunity for them to help. You know, we looked at getting help on the sidewalks, but we are not for profit, so we kind of fell into that gray area. Well, we can't really do that. Peaks are going to be investing a total of $3 million in this whole project. Right now, we're at 1.2 on the first 2. In the face of that, we really wanted that to look really nice, because that's basically where most people are going to be driving by. On the other side's an alleyway, and we're going to have 3 more duplexes behind that. This retaining wall and the sidewalks, I do have a quote there, and they're attached, last couple pages. The retaining wall on the north side there for Wright Street is $72,900. And the sidewalks for 14th Street, 15th Street, and all of Wright Street with ADA accessible, Bob Lawson, he's the one that quoted this, and it came out to $39,000. We did ask the mayor's office if they would take care of the ADA ramps. This is not necessarily something that we obviously have to have, but I think it goes in line with the city's direction on infrastructure and sidewalks and making the community more accessible. And so I have not heard back from them yet on that, if that's going to be approved. But the whole total part of the retaining wall and the sidewalks, the grand total comes to $111,900. The ask today is if we can use a committee initiative and have City of Logansport contribute $99,900 of the retaining walls and sidewalk for the improvement, take up 89% of that extra cost. Peak would pay the other 11% or $12,000, and we would be able to basically beautify that area that's been needing attention for many, many years. The sidewalks would be beneficial for everybody. In all actuality, the sidewalks really, I don't see our clients using them too much. And the reason being, we bust them in the back, and we're going to have a parking lot over there, and some of them can or cannot take stairs. You need stairs to get up. It'll be more so for the community, honestly, because when they go somewhere, we usually bus them in one of our buses, and our buses have the lifts. So what Peak's doing here, obviously, is taking a half-city block. I'm going to put 10 houses on there. Yes, Peak will own these. We're a not-for-profit. However, like anything else in life, there's no certainties. If Peak needed to sell one, or something happens to us, reimbursements go down and Peak no longer is here, these would be sold to the commercial real estate. I mean, and anybody who wanted to purchase those could purchase those individually, regular homeowners, or someone who was wanting rental income. So they could be turned back over into the regular real estate, not owned by a not-for-profit. In the meantime, what we're doing is we own these homes, we're bringing in people to live in the homes, and we're staffing those homes. One staff there, 24/7 on each side, 30 new jobs, 40 more people living here in Logansport. As Logansport continues to get bigger, we are trying to contribute to solving the housing shortage here. Unlike going out and renting maybe a single two-story home and try to put 2 or 3 people in there. It doesn't really work that way with us because of the needs. So we have to be creative, and this is the only thing that we have found that we can do. Waiting for help from the state of Indiana for development, we can't wait, and it's never, it's not necessary, there's points involved, and we've tried that, and we've lost, and in the meantime, we have people out there that need our help that we're trying to serve, and we can't, because we don't have housing. So looking at this, 2 or 3 years, 2 now, we've already filled 3 of the 16. I envision by the time we get this done, and in a year from now, and we have to get on the waiting list with Shepler Construction. They're excited, but it's a win-win for everybody. And so, out of a $3 million project, really, what I'm asking for is a community involvement, and see if we could get close to $100,000 to help us with the beautification of the front side and accessibility of public vaults.
Good.
I would entertain any questions. What I tried to do here in the photos, from front to back, so this is shooting it from the west to the east, that's the two duplexes, and you could see how bad the runoff is, and they just did this, and we have to have retaining walls. And then there's a front view picture of the duplex, and then one from the side. As you can see, it's hard to see the sidewalks, how bad they are, but they're really, really bad shape. There's more grass than concrete.
So you say you have a waiting list for this, for these people?
Yes, right now we do.
So can any contractor build you to your specs that you like?
And any contractor? Absolutely, they can. I mean, we bid that out, and,
You would own that, or would you lease that from them?
no, we own,
I would say, if I build you a new place, am I gonna own it, or are you gonna own it?
we own it,
Okay.
yes. We own it.
We agree to the price of what,
Right. We take the house, and then in return, we rent it out to the clients, because we own it and we serve our mission. We rent it out to them, basically, all-inclusive. And that way we can kind of cover most of our costs.
So your funding sources, just for your general operations, come from?
Medicaid. We're primarily, I would say, in the high 90% Medicaid reimbursed. As you know, Medicaid is, they pay, the government pays pennies on the dollar as far as reimbursement.
And so the more clients you have, the more reimbursement you get, or or you just have a need and you're trying to fill it? You're not looking for more?
So when you look out in this community, we have 200 clients right now. 30% of the people that rate services, either in a group home or in waiver services, do not even take services. So in all actuality, we could have another 30% higher of serving people in the community that's not even getting services. There's a waiting list to even get into waiver services right now. If you had an adult that you raised up to 18 and you actually wanted to try to put them on the waiting list because they had autism and they were going to receive waiver services funded by Medicaid, you're probably going to wait a good couple years before you're able to even receive services at all. There for many years there was no waiting list, because as you can see that with age and disabled waiver and the home community-based service waiver and family service waiver that we use, when they combine those two, you may have seen in the news, there was a projection in the state of Indiana of almost a $1 billion shortfall. So therefore, there became a waiting list to receive services when they merged those two waiver programs together. So we went from really good to a waiting list and people not receiving services that they're entitled to.
And so your clients, and they get like, SSDI or something, and then they're paying you rent also.
Right.
So it's not all Medicaid.
Right.
Their only source of revenue.
Right. So what they live off of, and they're limited on how much they can have, obviously. So we have to, when we figure out rents, we got to look at that. They get a certain amount of money. A lot of them will work in the community. We didn't even talk about that. So biggest part of our other job is to try to find them work. Right. Our Employment First initiative is going on right now, where we try to embed them in the community, find them work that they can do. And, let's be honest, most of them are minimum wage jobs or a little bit above, so they would get that on top of their SSI, so they could, buy their own food, pay their own rent.
Okay.
We get paid for staffing that person at per diem.
Through Medicaid.
Right, through Medicaid.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
Sorry about the voice. 2 weeks ago, I had a pretty bad upper respiratory, and it's still lingering in the lungs a little bit. Any other questions that I could answer?
Just the tough situation we've got is that the discretionary fund has got $123,000 in it. And this is, but it's crazy because the industrial park has $1.6 million. So, in your gray area, And we are going to project, maybe if the interest rates stay the way they are, we'll add another $200,000 at the end of the year into that fund. But we'd lose half of it on just this one project. This reminds me very much of when we dealt with the Humane Society, and, we're going through all the numbers and stuff like that. And we got down to them saying, well, what if they were nonprofit, and I assumed that they were being taken care of by the city and the county and that kind of stuff. And they weren't, they weren't fully funded that way. So it's kind of a question that came down to with people talking to us, it's like, what happens if they go out of business? Well, there's no one to take care of any animals that are hit, You guys are in a similar situation. So you've got, obviously, economic impact on the community, bringing people here, staffing, people, food and all the things of living. But unfortunately, our fund that we've got is not large enough to probably take almost all of it. And I have to eat crow now with John Michael, because had I had this updated with all the pending stuff, I would know how much of that 123 is actually available. Now I'm embarrassed that I didn't get that done. So yeah, I don't know that we'll be able to fund this whole thing. And I don't know if we can work on some kind of matching thing or something like that, where we might challenge the community, where we could match $1 for $1 for what you might collect or something. I don't know. We need to be kind of creative on that. And I say, and maybe there's something else in the city that might, I don't know. We are I often say we're like the end of the road. So when people have gone through all the different possible channels of stuff, they end up at the RDC. So anyway, I am nervous the fact that we don't really have enough money to give virtually 100% of the cash we've got for this one project.
Who typically, is it all, so it's on the property owners to maintain sidewalks, right? Like you said, there's more grass there than sidewalk. So who put it in initially, and then it's on the property owners to maintain sidewalks, and then we have some matching dollars through the city? Okay. Is that per parcel? Is that some of that matching opportunity through the city, is that per parcel? Aaron, do you know?
So it's a 50-50 match for residentials and nonprofit services and.
Okay.
So one of the things that I didn't mention, and I'm glad you kind of alluded to that. So 3 weeks ago, we were down in Indianapolis, and the governor had presented us our half-century award. Peak come March will be in business 70 years. So we've actually have grown leaps and bounds since we first started in a basement, and we're a good size, but because of what we do, the revenue stream's not there. So as far as my thought as far as staying in business, absolutely, there's such a great need for a service provider like us. But I'm also on board of directors down in Indianapolis, and there's 130 professional agencies that are in our affiliation. And what I do know is this, and I'm not saying this in a bad way about Logansport. I just want to say for what it's worth. I do talk to the other CEOs, and the support that their local cities give them is just, when we're not even on the same billboard as them. We don't have a spot. We don't even have a little sign. Really, we try not to ask for very much locally, because I know there's not deep pockets, and it's very hard to get any local support here for our not-for-profit. So with that said, and I don't know if there's a way to do something, and that's why we're bringing it to you. And I would entertain anything, and I appreciate you entertaining it.
Yeah.
But some type of support back to what we do would be much appreciative. I know if you do your own research, you'll see that a lot of other cities do help out the not-for-profits, and I've been here 9 years, and we've really haven't had any support, Mike.
Do they get any, I mean, those other communities, are there community foundations that are providing support or United Ways that are providing some support? Because there are entities out there specifically to nonprofits. So I'm just wondering.
Well, when I say that, I shouldn't say that, the Community Foundation does help a little bit.
Do they?
But I'm talking,
Yeah.
$10,000.
$100,000, yes.
Not like, for example, Lafayette, the provider there, they get handed over and donated a $14 million building.
Yeah.
That doesn't, we don't get stuff of that nature.
Yeah, got it. Got it. Okay.
And I know we're comparing different.
Yeah.
But, whatever help we could get,
Sure.
we would really appreciate it. And I don't mean that a bash against the town. I really don't. I mean, this is a good town. We do a lot of great things here. We're growing. A lot of problems have been solved. And, we would just ask for maybe a little bit of help, whatever we can get.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Aaron, your clients aren't gonna use the sidewalks, he said. If they just leave them, they leave the sidewalks, are they breaking any rule to not have sidewalks? If they took them out and just put grass in? Obviously, the retaining wall, I assume we have to have a retaining
We
wall.
do have to have that.
Safety.
They're supposed to maintain the sidewalk with the ordinance, so if those are new, they're totally, I would be maintaining it. If they don't do anything to it, it becomes grass, that's another story. So remove it totally.
Okay.
I did, not that it matters, but he's not actually in a TIF district, but that doesn't mean that it's not something that you can see impacting the TIF, but I just want to look at it.
I think we've crossed a bridge, with some of the State Board of Accounts stuff we've had, we used to have, Andy used to have some phrase, for the public good or something like that, where we could pull money from a TIF district for the public good, and now we've kind of moved to trying to have the discretionary fund, which is not taxpayers' dollars doing that. Which it sounds crazy to say, oh, we don't want to spend the taxpayers' money on helping you. So I guess we need to really probably,
Yeah,
we got your information, we need to see how it needs to work, and we can talk to people like Baker Tilly and see, what things could happen
That's
or
probably
whatever.
the best thing for us.
So,
I agree with that.
Well, thank you so much
Yeah.
for listening, and
Yeah.
thank you for your time today.
Thanks for what you do.
Next. 709 North 6th Street, the 60-second on the history of that property. As you know, the Logansport Community School Corporation owned it. Schools cannot give it to anybody except a government entity. So we reached out to RDC, you guys accepted it. Now you own it, so congratulations. So you own 709 North 6th Street. We did do an open RFP to the community, and we got 0 bids. So on the financial piece of people that could have just bid and got it and did whatever they wanted with it, that time came and passed. Again, we had no bids. So here we are. It's kind of a unique situation. You own a property. Now we got to find somebody else to do something with it. The process that I thought would be best is, over the last couple months, I've had probably 4 or 5 groups reach out to me. 3 seemed more interested and capable, and those 3 are on your agenda. I told them to submit basically a 1-page summary. So if you don't see a lot of detail, it's because I didn't ask for it yet. My next thought was, okay, now we have 3. They all have various proposals. They all have positives. They all have different things they're looking to do. My thought is that bring them in today. You would take it under advisement. You could ask any questions you want. The first one, Prime Contracting, Chris Hallam, is on vacation. but you have until your next meeting to ask any questions you want of anybody. Princessa is here, and TJ Palmer's here, which is number 2 and 3 on your agenda. Further thought would be that I coordinate a scoring system to put variables in there such as economic impact, are they tax-paying entities, what's their timeline on improvements, what are they going to do, is it good for the community, have all these different scoring factors involved. So on 925, you're not just looking at the same 3 pieces of paper, wanting to know who you piss off and who you don't piss off, basically. So trying to make it more an objective, they score out, have multiple people score it, bring it back to you as a board and say, this is who we think based on the proposals. So on 925, I've told each of them, that's when you would officially vote or plan to vote, and to come here today if you can, and 2 of them could. So here we are. You've got it in your packet. If you don't have any questions today for them, between now and the 25th would be a good time to either visit the site, talk to them. Like I said, they're very diverse proposals. You have a youth sports development facility, you have co-working office space. She also owns the property directly to the south of North 6th Street, so she has a vested interest in having that area look good. And then Chris Hallam, he's looking to relocate his primary business there, which is a contracting business. So I will kind of step aside for now, and if you have any questions for them, fire away.
I put a thing in there that didn't work out very well, but that yellow block shows you what it is there off of 6th Street. This is hard for me because I've been on this long enough to see this board do a couple things where we've done a project and then it didn't really take off. So we spent the money. Example would be the Gothric grocery store, where we helped add some sidewalks and do some infrastructure there and some lighting and stuff like that. And they came in and were in business for, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months, something like that. And then the part that I wasn't thinking about at the time was the fact that they actually own the property. We helped improve it, and they jacked the price up to try to sell it or whatever, and then it doesn't move because they're waiting for that price to hit. And it's like, geez, our intention, I originally thought, well, if we put sidewalks in, we do lights, okay, that would be used by the next person. So this is great. They improve a property so somebody else will get to use it. That's great, wonderful. I was still the school representative back then, so I did not vote. No, wasn't allowed to vote. Anyway, so this project all of a sudden hit me as like, oh my gosh, we're in the same kind of situation again, where as Bill said, if somebody would have bought it for the appraised price, it would be great. But the reality is that the roof's in terrible shape. And so whoever ends up being the owner, they're going to have to improve that property. However, at the same time, we can't be in a situation where we give somebody a property and they don't develop it for 6 years or 10 years or ever. So somehow we have to have some kind of callback, and in my opinion, we have to have some way to say that the tenants or whoever wants to be the final candidate to have that property, and that hopefully some kind of a scale we do would help that out, is we need to get it out on the market. It needs to get used, and then if it's all of a sudden, somebody doesn't work out for them or whatever, then they go for someplace else. But I feel like as if we need to, and I have no idea how you magically decide this, because I say they're all very good people and groups and stuff like that. So maybe we just let Princessa and TJ come up and talk a little bit about your plan. We've got their paperwork here, because we're going to have to say, come up with some kind of scale, and just, anything you guys can tell us, I guess, would help us to, sort out what's what.
2 more things, but then
Yep.
Aaron's got some, sorry,
I did coach each group the same. I told them the roof is shot. I don't know anything about roofs, that's just what I heard. So I threw a number out, 50 grand. again, I have no idea. But I told them the roof shot, just so they know what they're walking into, and don't submit a purchase price. We've been down that road on bidding, and it didn't work. I want them to focus their resources on the property and not paying us $30,000 or whatever. So those two things I consistently was transparent to all three groups.
Princessa.
So, in my proposal, I added things into it to make it successful, to put fail-safes in it, basically. So one of the first things to do, I would like for it to be a co-working space open to the community. As a real estate agent, I see a need for it. We have real estate agents coming in from out of town. And when it comes to writing a contract with a client, you know, are they just going to do it online and they don't have the opportunity to meet with them, you know, to sit down and, you know, talk it through or print items and stuff like that because their office is out of town. Same thing with mortgage lenders coming into town. Some of our very good mortgage lenders in town didn't have an office in Logansport when they first started. They had to wait months and years to, you know, prove to their company that they were good enough to open up a commercial space here. So one example would be Stacy Tevis. She does a lot of business, and she's moved to a couple of different companies, but it's like I know multiple mortgage lenders like that their company just isn't here in Logansport, and they're doing so much business in Logansport, and they don't have a place to go work. They're working out of their home to start with, you know, because their office is in Kokomo or in Lafayette or something like that. And so same thing when it comes to meeting with that person that wants to get a mortgage, they just have to do everything online because they're not going to invite them to their home to work. They don't want to meet them at a library or, you know, a coffee shop or something like that. They want something that's professional and private, and that's something that can accommodate these types of people. And the phase 3, this is one of the fail-safes. I would like to establish at least 2 residential apartments in the building to take care of the expenses in the property. It's going to be a major building to do the utilities with. And so instead of worrying about paying those utilities or anything like that, the building can continue to progress to this co-working space by having income that's constantly coming in. So in the phase 4 with the co-working space, once that opens, this is for people to start establishing businesses and working. And then once they become successful, instead of them moving to a different commercial